Hello. Testing. Yeah. Hey guys, my name is Ram, and welcome to this live session by Great Learning. Now, guys, before we do start this live session, I want a confirmation in the chat. I'm looking at the chat right now. I want a confirmation whether you guys can hear me properly and whether you guys can see the screen properly. And please do let me know if there are any disturbances in the background. I'll try to reduce them as much as possible. So while you guys, on that, let me just show you guys something. So here at Great Learning, we've come up with something really great. Mind the pun. So it's called Great Learning Academy. So it's basically, as the name suggests, it's an academy where you can enroll for a lot of different free courses. You have more than 18 plus free courses that you guys can enroll for, and get a free certificate on it. We have courses from ranging from 2 hours to 6 hours, and these courses are going to help you understand a specific topic. If you want to get in data science, you have courses for data science, machine learning courses, you have artificial intelligence courses. And if you're the kind of guy who wants to go into software development or IT, we have courses for that also with, a lot of different things like full stack development, information security, data structures and algorithms, Java programming, a lot of different things. Okay. So feel free to check out this website, that is greatlearning.in/academy, and check out our courses. You just have to do one quiz and you will get a certificate for this. It's all completely free, no catches over here. And if you guys want, you can go ahead and check out our app also. We have a great learning app, and you can do the courses from there. So if you're the app kind of guy who wants to do it on his phone, you can do it over there also. All right, so that out of the way, let me go ahead and check the chat and see if you guys give me a response or not. All right. So people are saying voice is not clear. Uh-huh. All right. So is the voice still not clear? Because I see people saying yes, yes in the start, but then I hear that there's a sound issue. What kind of sound issue is this? All right, fine. So it is definitely that. So let me just go ahead and let me increase the volume. Is that going to help? Okay, so that's the issue. Give me a second, guys. All right. So how about now? Is it better now? Just hold on one sec, guys. All right. Let's try this again. I changed my mic, so hopefully that would be better. Yeah. So people are saying it's better now. Okay, so there's a bit of construction noise going on. I hope you guys really don't mind that, and my voice can overpower that. If that's fine, we'll just move on to the whole thing. So I've already told you guys about Great Learning Academy. Please feel free to visit Great Learning Academy. Here you have a lot of different courses that you guys can enroll for, and they're completely free. So you don't have to worry about your physical needs if financially you can't get in. Yeah, that's all right. These courses are completely free. So this is amazing for especially if you're a student and especially if you don't have a job and you're looking to upskill yourself. All right, so that's enough about Great Learning Academy. Let's come back to the AMA we're going to be doing on career in DevOps. Now, DevOps is a very interesting field. It has a lot of different things that you can do with it. And what is DevOps? And what are those kind of questions that come to our mind? So I'll first answer those kind of questions. Like, so first we'll go through why DevOps. So we'll have an overview of that. Then we'll see what is DevOps and what are the DevOps phases. So once we've passed the DevOps and DevOps phases, we'll talk about DevOps and how it works with Agile, a case study about it. Then we'll talk about who is a DevOps engineer, what is his job. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll discuss the DevOps engineer average salary, and then we'll end the session with a large AMA or a Q&A. So if you guys don't know what an AMA is Ask Me Anything. So you guys get to ask me a lot of questions, but please keep them relevant to this topic. So I can answer to the best of my knowledge, and you can call it a Q&A also if you want a question and answer. All right, so I see in the chat we have someone asking for, Salesforce. Oh, you guys, please do not spam the chat. I do see your questions. Sometimes I may not be able to answer them because there are a lot of questions coming in. But please do not spam the chat. It destroys the whole harmony about for the chat, and a lot of other people don't get to ask their questions. So I can see that Mr. Abdul is asking that question again and again. I would recommend, please not spam the chat. I will read through all of these questions one by one. Okay. So, guys, let me first clear what DevOps is, because I'm pretty sure a lot of people have that kind of question over here right now. What is DevOps? Why do we need DevOps? So that's the first question that comes into our mind. Why do we need DevOps, and what is DevOps? So DevOps, let me clear it out, that it's about software development. This is going to be a... One second, guys. Let me just... I'm sorry again, there's a lot of disturbances, and I want this session to be as clear as possible. So give me like 2 seconds. I'll just ask the guys to stop the construction, because this session is important for me as well as you guys. So give me like 1 minute. I'll clear it out. Okay, yeah, that is so much better for me also, and you guys also. So DevOps is something that comes within the software development domain. A lot of you guys know what software development is, right? It's the process of creating software. Yeah, so software development is the process of creating software. So it's actually a very big process. When you look at the actual industry and how people actually develop, there are a lot of different things you have to consider. Like, you have a lot of different parts to it. Like, you have building part, you have testing part, you have deployment part, the maintenance part. A lot of different things are there. So we need a lot of different tools and methodologies that will help us to optimize this process. Like, to give you guys a good analogy, you should think of car development, automobile development. You have one line, the car is moving in that one line, and people keep on adding those parts. Those machines keep on adding those parts, right? So similarly, in software development, you have a pipeline where you keep on doing certain things to the software to make it more polished and more, better for the customers. So to do all of those things, we use a lot of different methodologies to improve upon the software process and the development process. We use a lot of different technologies and methodologies. So you guys might have heard of Agile or Lean or Kanban or extreme programming, right? So all of these are methodologies that help us to, improve our software development process. And similarly, we used to have something called waterfall model. So waterfall model was something that was used back in the olden days when software was, still upcoming, coming, like in the 1950s and 1960s, when it was mostly, all the research and all the work was mostly in the West that was happening, like in America and UK and all those countries. So that time they did not have this incentive of releasing software every month because they didn't have customers like us who wanted new updates, who wanted new apps. There was no market back then. The only market that they did have was the military or the research area. So that's what they had to do. They had to make software for them. And for them, you didn't have to crunch out software every month and so, right? You just had to think about all the requirements in one go, and then, you develop the software. So for that purpose, we used to use something called waterfall model. Now, waterfall model is basically this. It has many phases like requirements phase, designing phase, implementation phase, testing phase, deployment phase, and maintenance phase. It has these phases. So in the requirements phase, you decide the requirements of your software. You see what kind of things it needs, what kind of functions and features it needs. In the designing phase, you design how you're going to set everything up. And in the implementation phase, you create that design. And in the testing phase, you test it. In the deployment phase, you deploy the software to the end user. And in the maintenance phase, you try to keep, upkeep the servers. You add in any patches or anything. So this was your basic waterfall model. The thing with this is that, it was really useful. And it's not something that came just from software development. It was there in a lot of other fields too. It was really useful back then when it was all right to have long development life cycles. But these days, that's not the case. You cannot have long development life cycles. So if you look at the drawbacks of waterfall model, we understand that. Some of the drawbacks are it's a very long, life cycle. It requires a lot of planning. It's a very high risk venture where if you don't decide the requirements properly, and if something goes wrong, you lose a lot of money. And it was tough to schedule for all those kind of drawbacks. So it's not suitable for the today's market. In certain places, yeah, even again, you can still use waterfall methodologies in like government projects or in game industry. Like in gaming industry, if you're not working on a multiplayer game, if you're working on a single player game, you don't necessarily have this requirement of churning out games every month or updates every month. So for single player games where you have to just make one game and deliver it at the end of the year or after 2 years or 3 years, you can still use it. So it still has those very unique use cases. But these days, that's certainly not the case where you use waterfall methodology for a lot of different things. You use a lot of different things like Agile, you use Lean, you use extreme programming, feature-driven development. All of these kind of different methodologies helps us to do that. All right. So that's exactly what DevOps is. DevOps is a methodology that helps us to improve the software development process. Now, how it does it, we will be discussing in this session, right? So before I move on to discuss why it helps us, let me talk about what is DevOps. So DevOps is a software development methodology. It allows us to, use certain principles and values to make decisions in software development. So one of the main things about DevOps is it focuses on automating the whole process. So before I go to that, let me just tell you guys about DevOps. So DevOps is, it's a part of dev from developers and the operation team's ops. So you take both of these together and you get the DevOps, right? So it's kind of the, it's a mix of between developers and operations job. It bridges the communication gap between these developers and operations teams. So if you guys don't know what operation teams do, they basically, facilitate the deployment of software. But nowadays, it's been transferred to the DevOps role. So DevOps, basically, a DevOps engineer, what he would do is he would try to make sure that the software development pipeline, all the processes within this pipeline are as efficient as possible. He will write scripts to, patch up few things. He will make sure his KPI, his key performance indicator, is how many times the software has been developed well, how many times the software has been deployed to the end user without any mistakes. So that's what DevOps does. It allows us to make the whole software development process more optimized as well as more efficient. But it also has the philosophy mindset also, where you talk about the work culture of everyone working within the company. So a DevOps person is also kind of responsible for making sure that the the DevOps methodology is being followed even during development and even by other people who are not DevOps engineers, like the developers, the testers. They should also be following this. So there are certain set of principles and values that they have to follow, right? So that's what DevOps is. Now let me go through the questions that you guys have. You have a lot of questions, and this is an AMA, so let me answer questions one by one. Now I will be answering questions now, but I'll take a lot more questions in the end after I'm done telling you guys everything about. Okay. All right, so we have Shafi. He says, I'm willing to make a career in MuleSoft. To what extent AWS will be helpful in my career? So, Shafi, you talk about MuleSoft. I don't exactly have a very good idea about MuleSoft is. I suppose, is it a company? Um, okay, so is this related to Salesforce? I'm not exactly sure about that. We will have an AWS AMA also. Feel free to, leave a question, the same question over there. All right. So let me see other questions that you guys have. So yeah. Mm, what are the skill sets to get a job in DevOps for product-based companies? So Priyadarshini asked, what are the skill sets we need? So I'll be discussing what a DevOps engineer does in later in this session. So I'll be going through all of them over there. So Ranjit asked, for entry into DevOps, do the person has to know some development side or programming as well? So Ranjit, let me break it for you. You do need to know programming. You need to have the basic concepts of what programming is and how it everything works. Like you need to know the fundamentals at least. Like that's the bare minimum. It's not a necessary thing. You won't exactly be coding or developing, but you need to know about it because you'll be working to deploy a software, right? And that software is written by a developer who knows about designing the code and writing the code. So when you're deploying it, you need to know the requirements for deploying that software code. And to know the requirements to deploy the software code, you need to know how it's designed and how it's developed. So you won't be developing the code, but you will need to know about the code. So for that, you do need to know programming. And you also, did I just miss your question? Yeah, and you also said some development side. So yeah, you do need to know some development side, but that's the thing. You won't completely go into that, so you need to know the basics of it, and then you need to understand the whole architecture of establishing, a software development pipeline. So Abdul asks about, can you tell about Salesforce? So Abdul, I don't really have a lot of idea about Salesforce. Just like one of the other persons asked what Salesforce is and what MuleSoft is. I want to make a career in that. I'm not exactly an expert on that. If you have any DevOps related questions, I will feel I will be ready to answer them. But as I understand, Salesforce is a cloud-based company for customer relationship management. So it is used in cloud, so that is kind of related. But don't worry, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to inform my team, and we will try to come up with a video on Salesforce also. All right. Okay, so we have a person asking what is DevOps. So I hope I answered that for you. Anand asked that. And then Yash asks how to apply for the course. So it's very simple. All you have to do is just head on to greatlearning.in/academy, and over here just choose any topic you want. Now you can just scroll down over here. You can check out our live sessions that are upcoming. And if you don't want to check out the live sessions, you can check out the courses we have. A lot of different courses. You can choose the domain and check out, browse through, see what you want, and select that course. Just click on enroll for free. It will ask you to give your email number, email ID. You can sign up with Google, and then you just enroll for the course. It's as simple as that. And if you want, you can search your the domain, your favorite domain over here, and it will give you the result for that. Okay, so Ruchita asks how to get job for DevOps as a fresher because every organization wants an experienced person. So yeah, you're right. You do need to have some kind of experience to get into DevOps. So here are the two things that you need to know. Well, two things that you need to understand. that you do need experience as a DevOps engineer, because DevOps is a very important role. So it's designated to those people who have had years of experience in software development. But if you're going for a junior DevOps role, then it becomes a little easier. But then you give away some of the privileges that you have with DevOps role. You don't get to manage everything. You don't have a higher salary. But the thing is, you do get to learn a lot of things. So you can get a job. It's not at all impossible. It is possible. If you have certain projects and certain portfolio where you can showcase to the employer that you have knowledge and you have certain credibility in the field of DevOps, they will be ready to take you. Maybe not as the perfect or senior DevOps engineer. Maybe they might take you as a junior DevOps engineer who gets to learn all of this. Or, they might even take you as an intern. So that's there also. But don't worry, even if you get into a company as an intern, that's a really good thing because you get to learn. The experience really counts. So as a junior DevOps engineer, you might be getting paid less, but the exposure that you'll get and the amount of information that you'll get to learn over the job, that'll be a lot. And over the years, like maybe after 2 years or 3 years, maybe you can shift into a senior position or maybe in another company and be a DevOps engineer over there. So you have that option with you. So don't fret over being a fresher or being someone not familiar or not experienced with DevOps. If you're a software developer, this is much more easier for you, because software developers are the ones that generally tend to shift to DevOps or other designing fields, whatever. So I hope that answered your question, Ruchita. So Siddharth Gokhale asks, can you tell a course for quantitative finance? Well, Siddharth, you can go ahead and search that with Great Learning. Sure that you'll get a suitable result. So Pradeep asks, hello sir, मुझे Python सीखना है, but because CS किया हूँ, तो future में कोई problem होएगी क्या? Please guide me. So Pradeep, you said that you learned Python. I hope that's what you mean over here, because you've done CS. So yeah, you definitely won't have a problem, man. Python is a very like it's very flexible tool. You can use it in a lot of different fields. You can use it for DevOps also. If you want to write any Python scripts for automation purposes, you can use Python within DevOps. And there is a requirement for a lot of people to use Python also. They need to know Python to write automation scripts. And Python has a lot of different uses: data science, machine learning, deep learning, software development. If you want to be a web developer, you can even do that. There's a lot of frameworks. There's a Django framework for Python where you can develop backend for websites. So Python has a lot of demand. So if you've learned Python, you shouldn't really have a lot of problem. Just be sure on data structures and all the major concepts like OOPS. So Anand asked, what is software development? I hope I answered that for you, Anand. Software development is the process of developing software. It has a lot of different parts to it, and DevOps is something that helps us to collate all those parts and develop it more efficiently. So Vivek asks, how to start with DevOps and from where? So Vivek, after I'm done answering your questions here, I will explain to you how you can do all of that. So I see people. Okay, I'm finally catching up. I'm finally catching up to all the questions. So someone's asking, what is a salt stack? So salt stack is basically a set of configuration tools. So it's Python based, and it allows you to do things like automation, remote task execution, and configurations. So it allows you to do all of those things. It's mainly an alternative to Ansible or Puppet. Those are your configuration management tools. Now you might be asking, what is configuration management? That's a little more in depth, but configuration management is basically about writing configurations for certain things. Like if you want to configure your server, configure means set its settings. If you want your server to be available at a if you want the server to use only set amount of resources, then that's a configuration. If you want to certain tools to run on that server, that's a configuration. So when you have hundreds or thousands of servers at the same time and you want to update them with certain configurations, certain settings, you can do so by making use of these automation tools like SaltStack and uh, Puppet and Ansible and Chef. All right, there's a lot of questions. Um, so we have more questions. tell about Master of Computer Science? I don't exactly get your question, Ajit. I'll just move on. Shishel asks, I want a basic of C, C++, Java. Where do I get? So that's very easy. Just go ahead and type in YouTube or Google. Just type in Great Learning and type in whatever you want. So if you want Great Learning, if you want C++, just type in C++ tutorial and you will find the relevant video over here. You guys can see we have a lot of videos on C++ and C also. So you can go ahead and check them out. You can do that on YouTube also. So Sumit asks, for DevOps, is it necessary to learn any programming language? See, you don't necessarily have to know a programming language, but I would recommend that you do know because you're going into a field where you do use programming language a lot. So yeah, definitely would recommend. And if you are, you don't know what to choose, I would recommend Python because Python has a lot of flexibility, as I told you guys earlier. You can use it for a lot of different purposes. So let's say that your code is being developed in Django, then you need to know how that code is being developed, or you don't need to know how it is being developed. You need to know what is being developed and what is the design of it and how can you deploy that code. So for that, you do need to know about it. So programming is something I would definitely recommend for you guys. So Deepak asks how to make a career. Deepak, I will be answering that in this session itself. So somebody asks AWS, Python, DevOps. How is this combination? Yeah, it's a really good combination, Shafi. You're definitely going to get a cool job with that. AWS is a good technology to learn right now, and especially combined with DevOps, it gives you a good infrastructure platform where you can tell people that you have a good basis for forming an infrastructure for a company. So Thempless asks, I want to learn Scilab proper from beginning. Scilab. All right, so I understand that Scilab is a type of a programming language. Noted. I'll recommend it to my team, and we'll come up with some kind of video to help you out. So subscribe and wait for any future videos. All right. So I see a lot of recommendations for courses to create. Somebody's asking me to speak in Hindi. Well, I do know Hindi, but this is a session for everyone. So I don't want to single out people who don't know Hindi, right? But if you guys want me to make a Hindi video, then do leave a comment. After this session gets uploaded as a video, I'll try to answer them. Answer them as in, it will be as a recommend. So later we can come up with a Hindi AMA for this. So you can use Python for scripting and you can use it for programming also, Shafi. So somebody is asking, can you put some light on testing using DevOps and future scope? So we have Hemant asking us this question. So Hemant, yeah, you can definitely, okay, let me just give you an idea. Actually, here's what I'm gonna cut off the amount of questions that are coming in right now because then I'll just complete the rest of it. Because if you don't complete the rest of it, then you guys will ask me questions that I'm gonna tell you anyway. So now we know what is DevOps, right? So you can think of DevOps as many different things. It can be like way of software development. You can think of its values or principles. You can even think of its methodologies or tools. I mean, I said that DevOps is a methodology. True, DevOps is a methodology, but it does comprise of all these different things. You have a lot of tools that are specific to this domain. You have a lot of you have DevOps that is as a methodology that helps us to develop software. And it does have a set of values and principles, and it is a way of software development. Okay, so you can think of DevOps as all of these things together. Now let's go to the DevOps phases because here's where I can answer Ajit's question, not Ajit's question, where Hemant's question about testing. So here's the DevOps phases. So within these phases, right, these phases will definitely will define how you develop your software. So you have phases like continuous development, continuous testing, continuous integration, you have continuous deployment, and you have continuous monitoring. You have all of these different phases. So continuous development is the phase in which you continuously develop the code. Now, these phases are not linear. You won't have development after testing and then integration after testing and then deployment after integration and then monitoring after deployment. All these things kind of happen simultaneously. They happen together. You set it up in such a way that it happens together. So first, you'll be developing the code. The developers will be developing the code, but we say it's continuous development. That means that the code will be developed continuously by the developers. They won't do anything else. They'll just be developing the code, and they'll send it for testing, the building process. So once it's been built, it will go ahead for testing, and this testing starts happening on the code that the coders have developed. But the thing is, while this code is being developed, the developers start working on new projects and new functions and features. So you can see that it's happening simultaneously, right? So in continuous testing, we test a software continuously, all the different versions of software continuously. First, you test it for a lot of different things like dynamic testing, how it's working in its runtime. Is it able to take in all the inputs that it can? Will it crash for certain things? Can it integrate with all the other parts of software development without any issues? And you take it for things like acceptance testing, whether it has all the requirements that we had decided earlier or not. So those kind of things will happen in continuous testing. So that's what happens. In DevOps, you basically want your testing to happen continuously as well as without human intervention. So what will happen is basically you will write your test scripts earlier, and once you've written all those test scripts earlier, right, you'll just execute those test scripts every time new code has been pushed. So let's say you've created a software development pipeline and you push new set of code, and that code goes into the building process. It gets built into an executable, and that executable starts getting tested. So a person is not going to come and test it individually. Now they can do it, but you want your process to be automated. No one should be disturbing it. So the test cases will be written beforehand, and all that will happen in the pipeline is that those test scripts will run on the code, and it will automatically check if it's okay or not. If something goes wrong, then a notification goes and people rectify what has gone wrong, and the whole process repeats again. So that's is something about testing in software development. Okay, then we talk about continuous integration. So continuous integration is basically when you integrate all the different parts of software development process. Let me finish deployment and monitoring, then you guys will know what integration does. So in deployment, right, once your testing has been completed, once your code has been approved, it goes to the staging server or environment. It waits for approval from the higher ups, and they say that it's fine, or if it's scheduled to release at a specific date, it will get deployed at that specific date, and it will happen continuously without any involvement from humans, unless there is some issue with the deployment. Let's say that the code was tested and it was fine, but during deployment you find out that something was missed. The test coverage wasn't 100%. You missed out a few things, and it did not get deployed properly because we missed out one thing, and that deployment became a failure. So that is on the DevOps guy to see why did it become a failure, how do I rectify it, and how do I quickly put up the application again as in the production environment so that my end users can start using it, right? So that's your continuous deployment, and then you have continuous monitoring. Once you've deployed your application to the end users, your users can start making use of that application, right? And once they start making use of it, you want a feedback. You want to know what happened to your application, not what happened. How is your application doing? Is it performing well? Are the customers liking it? And those kind of things. To do that, you have to monitor your application. You have to monitor your software. You have to monitor all the processes running in your server on which you're running your software. You have to monitor your server itself, and you have to monitor your customers' activities, all those things. So with the monitoring, what you get is you basically get an input. You get an insight on how everything is working, and once you get an insight, you can use that insight to make better decisions in the next cycle where you're developing again, but this time you're developing with the knowledge you had from previous deployment. All right. So these are the phases of DevOps. Again, they're not exactly linear. They happen simultaneously, and they're continuous and automated, right? Okay, so Agile and DevOps. So now you might be asking, what is the difference between Agile and DevOps, right? So Agile and DevOps aren't that different. They're kind of similar. So Agile methodology, we know that it's used for making development better. You have smaller sprints. You have smaller development life cycles in which you develop code. You get the code reviewed. You get the feedback. You improve the whole cycle. You improve the code, and you deploy it again, right? So the whole idea of Agile is to make sure that teams can work faster, more efficiently in regular sprints, and to keep on improving based on feedback given to them. Earlier, Agile was used only by developing teams. It hadn't trickled down to the other parts of the whole software development process. So while it was successful for improving the development speed, testing and operations were lacking. So the testing team and the operations still were not able to, make use of Agile. And that's kind of when DevOps came in. So with that, right, the need to improve on testing and operation was realized, and that improvement was achieved with the help of automation and continuous integration. So that is a part of DevOps. That's how your DevOps emerged. Companies small and big quickly took up the initiative and improved their delivery part as well by implementing DevOps. So now you basically use Agile and DevOps in unison. You use Agile in places where you need it specifically for development, and you use DevOps for the rest of it. And DevOps kind of borrows a lot of concepts from Agile itself, right? So they kind of intermixed. You don't necessarily consider it separate, you would use it together, right? So that's the relationship between Agile and DevOps. Okay, so let me quickly go through the DevOps case study. We have different companies like Etsy, Telegraph, Netflix. They do all different kinds of things. Telegraph is a newspaper company. Netflix is a media entertainment company. Etsy is like Quicker or OLX, where you sell stuff. Or actually, it's not exactly like that. It's where you provide services. So it's for like freelancing purposes. So use Etsy for that, right? A lot of different purposes. So you have different service models, different business models, but all of these companies, right, they implemented DevOps and they saw a lot of change in their whole process of developing the software and releasing the software and the quality of the software. So with implementation of DevOps, they saw that the productivity increased for them. They became way more efficient in the process of developing software, and the security increased also. When you implement DevOps, you kind of implement a whole layer of security over DevOps. You have like DevSecOps, which is a field within DevOps, which focuses primarily on making sure that your software is secure, right? So that's there also. It made the product that these companies are producing more excellent, and that increased the revenues for these companies. So they saw a lot of benefit on implementing DevOps. They also saw the scalability option available to them. That means, once you implement DevOps, you prepare yourself for scalability. So that means that if your number of customers increasing and you want to expand your business and services, then scalability is important. You need to scale your operations. So on implementing DevOps, they saw that they were able to scale all of this. Okay. All right. So before I begin, who is a DevOps engineer? Let me just go through more questions. I have a lot more questions coming in. So King of World is asking, sir, please combine Hindi or English language both. All right, fine. We'll see what works later. Compulsory need to learn Python scripting. No, Vasudev, you don't have to compulsorily learn Python. You just need to know how you can automate processes. If you can write scripting in other, like if you want to write it in Perl, you can write it in Perl also. So it kind of depends on you. I recommend Python because Python is something that people can easily get into, and it's easy to start. When you start to get into the field, right, that's when you start seeing more options. Whatever I'm telling you is just like a drop in the ocean. They have a lot of different things, and I can't tell you everything, but I'll give you guys some idea about it. So when you get into the field, you yourself will discover that there's so many different things. So Chancellor is saying, "Sir, कुछ हिंदी में बोलो." मैंने बोल दिया. Ajit asks, what is the difference between Master of Computer Science and DevOps? So I think you're asking about Masters in Computer Science. See, DevOps is more like an industry thing. You don't exactly, or as far as I can tell, there is no like masters in that particular field. And masters in computer science again is very vague. You have a lot of different masters in computer science. You can do data science, machine learning, deep learning, and parallel human computer interaction. You have a lot of different types of masters. Ranjit asks, as you said, DevOps is a methodology, but from a tools point of view, what are some of the minimum tools one should be aware of? Example, Puppet, Ansible. So, Ranjit, a very good question. I really appreciate that you asked this question. So, yes, what are the basic tools you'll need to know, right? So, okay, I was planning to include it, but I thought maybe you guys won't ask this kind of question. So, okay, so in basic tools, so there are a lot of different types of tools. So let me just go through them one by one. So you have phases, right? Let me just show you the phases again. And within the phases, you have a lot of different tools. So within continuous development, you have tools like whatever integrated development environment you're using and whatever plugins you're using with them. Let's say using IntelliJ or whatever. So that isn't exactly a DevOps tool. That's more like a development tool. But your DevOps tool over here can be your static testing tool, like your integrated development environment does some kind of testing, right? It does like this kind of testing. The static testing is basically checking for errors and syntax errors and bugs and code smells and those kind of things. So you don't do that in dynamic testing. That is our continuous testing. That is separate from static testing. In static testing, while the developer is developing the code, you check for mistakes. You see that the developer is writing the best way possible or not. Sometimes you can write code in two ways, and you can set a rule in those static testing tools that the developer has to write this way, not the other way. He has to make sure that the code he's writing is the best code possible. If he's not writing the best code, then you need to inform him. So you have static testing tools involved in continuous development, and you have version control system tools like Git. You have Mercurial. You have AWS Code Commit. You have a lot of those version control systems that allow you to version your software that is also a part of continuous development. So I would recommend, for beginners, learn Git. So just remember Git, okay? I think I'm confusing you guys a little bit with all those complicated, advanced tools. For continuous development, just know Git, but you need to know Git very well. You can't know Git just like everyone else. That 10-minute thing where you just, commit a code and push the code, that's not it. You need to know a lot more. You need to be able to design Git workflows. Git workflows for your company. How many branches are you going to have? And all those kind of things. You have Git is very advanced. It has got a lot of different concepts that you do need to know in Git. Okay, then you have continuous testing. So in continuous testing, I would recommend going with Selenium, because Selenium allows you to write a lot of different testing scripts, and some of your testers will be writing them in Selenium. So Selenium is a recommend if you're talking about continuous testing. Now comes when it comes to continuous integration, you need to know Jenkins for beginners. Jenkins is open source. All these tools I'm going to be talking about are open source, so you don't have to worry about paying for any of these tools. Jenkins is open source, and it's the most widely used continuous integration tool. So definitely recommend is Jenkins in continuous integration. Then deployment. Now you can do deployment with Jenkins itself, but if you're looking for a specific tool for this, I actually would recommend skipping deployment, because deployment will come within Jenkins itself. If you want a specific tool for deployment, then there are a lot of tools like Excel Release or Deploy or Octopus Deploy. You have tools like that, but they're not recommended. Just learn Jenkins. For continuous integration deployment, just learn Jenkins if you're for a beginner. Then continuous monitoring. Now for monitoring, there are different kinds of monitoring. A lot of people go for Naji OS. Personally, I like to go for Prometheus and Grafana. Prometheus and Grafana are pretty cool, and I've seen a lot of my friends working with Prometheus and Grafana in the industry. So that's a recommend. If you want logs, so there are two types of monitoring. Prometheus and Grafana are free. We have a video on that if you guys want to check out also. We have actually a video on all of these different tools that I'm talking about right now. And if you want to collect logs, there are specific tools for logs also. Like you have Loki that is used for collecting logs, or if you want, you can use Elasticsearch or Splunk. They also allow you to collect logs. All right. So these are the basic tools, but there are some tools that are not exactly a part of this integration, but they are involved, like Docker. Now, Docker is a very, very important part of DevOps, where you have to deploy your software within containers, right? So I would recommend learning Docker and Kubernetes also. Kubernetes as an orchestration tool that helps you to work with Docker containers. So that is your microservices part, where if you want to deploy your software as microservices, use Docker and Kubernetes. We have a very extensive video on Docker, so if you want to check that out, you can go ahead and type in Great Learning Docker, you will find it. Okay, and there are more like configuration tools. You can use Puppet and Ansible. They are free. You can make use of it. And I would recommend learning something that help you with automation. So you can learn how to bash script. So basically write scripts in your bash terminal and those things. You need to know how to write cron jobs. Definitely know how to work with Linux. Now, Linux is important. You will be setting up infrastructure and you'll be working with your infrastructure, right? So you need to know about Linux. So try to study about Linux a lot. So that is a recommend also. So Ranjit, I hope that is enough for now. But if you want, we can come up with a whole list of tools. I have a lot of tools in mind that I can tell you guys, but let me just reiterate what tools you guys need to know. Git, then you need to know Jenkins, Docker, Git, Jenkins, Docker, then know Puppet or Ansible, and then you need to know other tools such as Selenium if you want to learn how to set up Selenium and run testing scripts on it. And you need to know how to work with servers like Nginx and Apache and Linux. You need to know Linux. If not Linux, learn Windows, like not the GUI and all, like the core part of it, how the kernel works and how the processes within the kernel works, what is process scheduling and all those kind of things. Okay. Okay, so Manish asks, how much can a senior DevOps engineer can earn per annum? Well, it depends. And if you wait for it, I have a whole extensive slide just for that. Somebody, Mahesh is asking, R and SPS enough to get a job? That is not my specific domain, so I can't answer it correctly. What will DevOps salary be with 4 years experience? Again, time. I will tell you how it will be. I have a whole slide for that. So Bala asks, am I suitable for DevOps? I'm having 4 years of experience in Java. Yeah, Bala, you can definitely shift to DevOps, but that depends what kind of Java you're doing. Are you doing software development or what? Are you doing testing? Because it's easier for testers and software developers to shift to DevOps, so I don't think you should have much of a problem. Okay. Shafi asks, is Python? Okay, I've already answered that. Okay, so Pinky is asking, do you know Informatica and Cognos? I know what Informatica is, but it's again not my domain of expertise. Technical fan is asking, from which language can I start? Again, Python is the best choice. I would recommend for any beginner, or C++. 1 year data analyst to DevOps. How to make this and what tools are required? Okay. So if you want to change from data analyst to DevOps, that is not a problem, but it will be difficult for you. That's all right. I told you again, you have to start as a junior DevOps engineer or intern, right? That helps you out. Tools I've already mentioned. Just if you didn't get a note of these tools, it's all right. Just watch the video again. Or we are going to be releasing a new DevOps video. You guys can go ahead and subscribe to wait for that DevOps video also. How can I understand data structures and algorithms in easy way? Well, Ramkrishna, you can understand data structures and algorithm by watching one of our videos. We have a really good trainer uh, who has excellent knowledge on this specific domain. So you can go ahead and search data structures and algorithm, great learning. You can check out that video. Otherwise, if you just want like some words advice, it's practice, man. You got to practice data structures. That's how you do it. So Deepak is asking, sir, what I do for DevOps and Python or PHP? Can you please rephrase your question, Deepak? I'm not getting exactly. What is business file in computer? Well, again, Ajit, can you rephrase your question? I don't exactly understand what this is. What is business file in computer? How much coding is required for this? In okay, Cyan, you need to know the basic fundamentals. Like you need to know data structures, you need to know design concepts, and if you want a really good job, then you need to know a lot more things like database. That is not part of programming, I guess. So how much coding exactly? So enough coding that allows you to automate a lot of processes. So I would recommend beginning, using Python, try to automate things within your computer itself. That will give you a good base to start off. And how much coding? Yeah, again, data structures is a must, and how to design the code, and what else? Uh, I just go with the core fundamentals of coding, like OOPS, object-oriented programming, know how to develop. You don't necessarily have to develop, but know how to develop. Okay, so all the fundamentals. All right, so Moto says, I'm working on Nagios, Jenkins, and Ansible. How to find next job? All right, Moto, if you know Nagios, Jenkins, and Ansible, that's really good. That's a good base you formed for yourself. You have a monitoring tool with you, you have a continuous integration tool, and you have Ansible. You can basically use Ansible for automation. Now, I would recommend getting more into AWS also, because you will be using AWS a lot. So just go through all the AWS services there are, and that you will need to use. Okay, and to find a next job, I would recommend just start applying. Start applying for any junior DevOps engineer role you see. Start applying for that, and once you get an interview, be ready to do a coding question. They always ask coding questions for DevOps roles. Okay, so they'll give you an online coding question. You need to have basic coding knowledge to answer them, or just go to a Hacker Earth and learn some coding base over there. Okay. Okay. So Manisha is asking, hi, if I have almost 9 years of experience in different vertical and wish to apply for DevOps, is any recruiter consider my credentials, or what obstacle will I get? Experience in different vertical. One second. Different vertical. Let me just check that out. Um, can you extrapolate on what different vertical is? Because I can't find a specific answer for that. Manisha, yeah, if you can, extrapolate on what different vertical is, I'll try to answer your question. How to become masters in Docker and Kubernetes. So Vasudev, becoming a master in Docker and Kubernetes is basically about practice. Learn how to deploy different kinds of things. Learn how to deploy Node apps, Django apps, or, all the different things that you can work with. Learn all the major concepts for it, like what is ingress if you're talking about Kubernetes. How do I manage the pods? How do I upscale? How do I, update the pods? How do I manage them, monitor them? All those different kinds of concepts. And within Docker, yeah, again, more advanced knowledge and practice to it. Okay, so Abhimanyu says, I have done DevOps engineer, but how do I get a job in DevOps? So that's the thing, Abhimanyu. Like I've told you earlier, as a fresher, you can get a job in DevOps, but it will be a junior DevOps role or as an intern DevOps role. Okay, so you need to apply for those kind of roles, and you need to make your resume in such that you portray that you have DevOps knowledge, that you know these tools. A lot of recruiters, what they do is they search for the tools, like if they're checking for Docker or Kubernetes or S3, AWS, whatever. So they'll check through those tools, and if you know those tools, if you have those tools on your resume, your resume might come up, and they might shortlist you, looking at all the grades and all your projects that you've done, and they'll give you a call. Okay, that's a lot of questions. Let me. All right, guys. So keep on putting your questions. I'll just finish this off because we don't have a lot of time left. So, who is a DevOps engineer? So, let me clear this off so it will clear a lot of your questions. So, a DevOps engineer is basically responsible for designing, maintaining the software development pipeline. So whatever pipeline you're creating, whatever things you're including within that pipeline, like building process, testing process, staging process, deployment process, and monitoring, that you need to know how to design the infrastructure on which the pipeline will be established and how to maintain it. When I say infrastructure, it is the hardware. If you're doing it an on-premise thing, like you have your own servers, then you need to know everything about those servers. Or if you're using cloud, like let's say you're using AWS, then you need to know about AWS also. How can you use the virtual machines that you're going to be launching from AWS? How to automate it so that you can launch these virtual machines without clicking on anything. All those kind of things. And how to maintain them. To maintain them, you need to monitor the pipeline itself. When I say monitor the pipeline, I mean looking at all the different infrastructures, see if anything is crashed, see if there are any issues, and you need to configure alerts that will alert you when something goes wrong. Okay, a DevOps engineer knows how to automate processes and write automation scripts. He also knows how to keep the whole infrastructure secure and robust. You need to make sure that there are no security vulnerabilities because your code is very important. No one should have access to it other than you. Okay, and that's why you need to make sure that it's secure. So there's a security concept also. So with DevOps, it's kind of like a jack of all trades. You're not concentrating on one thing, but you need to know a lot of different things. So that's the thing with DevOps engineers. That's why they ask experienced people, because they have experience working with these technologies for a long time, right? Okay. A DevOps engineer has excellent communication skills that help him to convey ideas and exchange information between different teams. So if you're the kind of person who doesn't like to talk to a lot of people and just, develop code, then this is not a job I would recommend for you. One of my friends is like that. He's really into developing, and he himself knows that he's not going to shift into DevOps job, because that job it makes people talk to each other, and you need to have really good communication skills over there, where you need to talk to each other, convey ideas, make sure that no misunderstanding is happening. And you also need to instill the DevOps principles within others also. You have to make sure that everyone knows that it's their end-to-end responsibility. If the person is writing the code, their responsibility does not end there. They have to make sure that if something goes wrong within the end of the pipeline, then they have to help rectify that mistake. On a daily level, a DevOps engineer is responsible for making sure of scaling needs of a cloud are fulfilled or not, optimization, managing permissions, and doing basic documentation. So this is what a DevOps engineer does. Now, when you talk about the knowledge he needs to have, so he needs to have a lot of knowledge. And let me just list it. Yeah, just look at the set of knowledge. You have a lot of different things over here. You have to have knowledge of Linux, Windows operating system. Like how do these operating systems work? You need to know about OS like in detail from one thing to another. I would recommend going towards Linux rather than Windows because a lot of deployment happens on Linux. But that does not mean Windows is left out. Windows is also important. Okay, just have a basic knowledge about these and know how to work with Linux, dude. Guys, Linux is very important. So if you want to practice anything DevOps, do not do it on Windows. Do not download Jenkins on Windows. Do it on Ubuntu. And if you guys don't know how to launch, any of the tools on Ubuntu because you don't have Ubuntu, use AWS, use a virtual machine, practice with that. There are free services out there that you can make use of. Then they need to know about database technologies. So you need to know about database, you need to know about server, and how these servers work, how does database work, and all those things, because you'll be connecting databases and servers together. And you need to know about orchestration. Orchestration is your Kubernetes or Docker Swarm. The orchestration is basically maintaining and managing different containers together. Again, if you want to know more about Docker, refer to our Docker video. Okay. Then you need to know about cloud technology, either AWS or Azure or GCP. I would recommend AWS because AWS has a high demand and it's easy to get into. Well, in my opinion. Okay, then source control. This is your Git. You need to design standard workflows, know how to work with Git, and etc. etc. Then comes continuous integration and deployment. This is Jenkins, where you know how to create those pipelines, where you know how to create those build jobs that will get triggered or get executed on certain conditions and deploy your software. Then automation, where you need to automate all those parts. You can use jobs to automate, or you can use scripting to automate. Then you need to know scripting. You need to know how to work with Bash terminal, the PowerShell. You can use Python or Perl or JavaScript for scripting for whatever purpose. And networking. Now, networking is also important. You need to know how all of these things are connected together. Whole software pipeline, your deployment, how is all connected together, how is the how well is the API working, and how to optimize it, and making sure that your network is safe and not. And last but not the least, excellent communication. That is your verbal speaking skills. Okay, that was a lot. I am parched. But I hope you guys got to know what a DevOps engineer knows. But don't worry if this feels like it's a lot. Yeah, it is a lot, but you don't just know everything from year zero. A lot of people take years to learn about this. That's why, sometimes you need to be very experienced to get a DevOps job. Like they ask for 8 years. So that's why I recommend for all of you who are beginners or who are looking to shift their domains to look for junior DevOps roles. Those roles are easier to get. You don't need to know all of these things to get those jobs, right? Okay. Now let's go to DevOps average salaries, because I know a lot of people are waiting to see how much salary you can earn as a DevOps engineer, because that's very important, dude. Yeah, because in the end, it's going to be about salary. A lot of you might be interested in actually working with the technologies. That's really cool, but salary is important too. You got to, take care of your family, or you got to take care of yourself. That's important too. So let's look at these salaries. So we have, so the salaries, right? They depend on a lot of things. So they depend on things like the company you're going to be in. The company can be a major factor. Some companies can, readily give more salaries. Some don't. So you have to think about that. Then the job role. You won't always get DevOps as the designated role. You might have some other name for it, like infrastructure engineer or release manager, all those kind of, or site reliability manager, all those kind of jobs, right? They kind of interlap, and it doesn't have the same name. So the job also depends, right? And the country where the job is. So if you are doing it in America, it's going to be different than how you're going to be doing it in India or UK or Sri Lanka or Pakistan or China. So there also, depends, the salaries depends. So which city also the job is in, because city defines your standards of living. If you're living in Mumbai, then your standards of living are going to be very high. So you need a higher salary to accommodate for that. But if you're living in a smaller city like Yeah, what is a small city? So let's say if you're living in Bhopal, then you're gonna have lesser requirements, so your salary will also be lesser. But I don't think you will get a DevOps job in Bhopal. But that's another thing. And how well you negotiate. So you need to negotiate for a good salary also. And again, your skills, how well you're able to showcase your skills, and if people like them or not. So these are the numbers. So in America, you're going to get $100,000 and up. That's like minimum. If you're a DevOps engineer, you can even get as high as $200,000 per year, and that's like a six-figure salary. That's really good. And India, it's from 7 lakhs and up. So 7 lakhs is pretty good amount. But this is again, this is a very less amount. A lot of experienced DevOps engineers actually earn around 24 lakhs, 34 lakhs, 40 lakhs and above. That actually depends on how many years of experience you have. What was your previous job? How much did you earn in your previous job? And all of these other things that I've told you guys, like the company, the job role, the country, the city, and all of those things matter. As a junior DevOps role, let me be honest over here, you won't necessarily earn 10 lakhs per annum or more than that. You'll probably earn, depending on your skills, depending on these factors, you might earn 4 lakhs per annum or 3 lakhs per annum or 5 lakhs, 7 lakhs, like that. Okay? So these are your average salaries. So there are some prerequisites. So these prerequisites are, to help you guys understand that you don't need to know all that knowledge to start learning DevOps. To be a DevOps is a different thing, but to start learning DevOps, you need two things: basic Linux commands and basic coding. So if you know these two things, you can start off learning DevOps very easily, and they're not that difficult. I'll be honest with you. Basic coding, what I mean is, knowing what variables are and how to what do they do. Uh, and if you guys need to know about basic coding, you can go ahead and check out our videos on that. We have C language tutorial, C++ tutorial, Java tutorial, all those. Check for great learning and whatever language. Basic Linux commands, again, to be honest, you don't need to know them, but I do recommend, going through the basic commands, like how to create a directory, how to handle files within Linux, all those kind of things. Okay. All right. So with that out of the way, let's do this AMA and Q&A. So I'm going to give you guys 5-7 minutes. Throw your questions at me, okay? And I'll try to answer the rest of them also that I missed out. All right, so Stark is asking DevOps versus data science. It really depends on what you like. If you like data science and all the technologies associated with that, I would recommend data science. Because the thing is, even in data science or DevOps, the career paths are really good. You can go to very high points with either of these careers. What depends over here is your preference to it. Okay, so how to become a software developer? Supriya asks. Well, there are a lot of paths. I would recommend starting with coding. And once you've done coding, learn all those different concepts. Actually, coding should be enough. Learn the fundamentals of coding, and you can now start applying for a software developer job. That's it. Ranjit is like, thanks a lot again for the detailed answer on tools. Yeah, no problem, man. That's what this session is for. But I do hope you got something out of it. Kirti Priyas, what about Google Go? Is it trending, or can we get a job through Go? You can get a job through Go. Go is it's gaining popularity fast. So if you know Go, right, you probably already know another language, because I don't think people start learning coding with Go. But Go, it's very fast. A lot of people are using Go these days, and you can even use Go in DevOps also. Interesting fact, Docker containers, right? They are written in Go. So, there. So yeah, you definitely can, start with Go. Not start with Go. If you know Go, then that's great. But do not start with Go. As a beginner, I would recommend starting with Python or C++ or C. But since you know Go, then it shouldn't be a lot of problem for you. Shubham asks, how to start a career in Python development? You can start a career in Python development. So you want to know how to start. I would recommend going through the basics. Check out our video on Python. It will give you all the basics, and once you go through all those basics, right, you get a firm understanding of what Python is. And then you can choose what kind of field you want. You can be a Python developer, that is for software development. So for that, you just need to know core Python and concepts such as data structures and or object-oriented fundamentals, all those kind of things. And if you know all those, then you can go for looking to start your Python developer career. How to get a career boost? Okay, okay. So that's what you meant. Career boost. Do projects, man. If you have really good projects, industry grade projects, that means you put a lot of effort, and you can show it to your employer that you put this kind of effort. Or, dude, if you want, you can just create an app for yourself or create a desktop application, whatever development you're doing with Python, and you need to showcase that you've done this and you've learned all these technologies and you know all these technologies. Then you can definitely, get a better job. So Bala says development in Java. Yeah. So like I assumed earlier, you're talking about development in Java for 4 years, right? Then it shouldn't be really be problem for you. You already have a good basic understanding of what developing is. You can even ask people in your company. If you work for a software development company and you work with Java, actually ask around. There will be people who deploy the code and infrastructure engineers, or talk to the infra team, learn from them. If you start making a repo with them and you start talking to them, you'll start learning a lot. That way you don't have to change your jobs, and you can even switch within your company. But if you don't have that kind of role in your company, uh, then you can just follow videos that are available to you, like this one. Okay, so Shubham asked for Python development, what we need to learn, like complete Python development. So I can't go into that in detail because that's another whole topic. So wait for Python AMA. I'm pretty sure one of our trainers is planning for that. Okay, so Yash asks, I worked on ELK stack in my internship. I know Selenium a little bit, Python and core Java, but I don't find any job on ELK stack. Can you guide how to get a job on ELK stack? Ooh, so this is an interesting question, Yash. You've asked ELK stack. Yes, I like ELK stack too. It's pretty cool, right? The thing is with ELK stack, it's a whole monitoring thing, and only specific companies use it. So instead of identifying yourself as a person who knows ELK stack. You can do that as well, but I would rather say try to get a domain as in like you have a lot of different technologies. Don't be stuck to ELK stack. As you said, you know Selenium, Python, and Core Java. So are you like working as a software developer right now, or was that the only internship you had? Because right now, if you know these technologies, it would be easier for you to get a software developing job. If you know software development and you can showcase that you know these extra tools, people are more readily ready to take you in, because you know software development as well as these tools, which is very important. But if you want a very specific job in ELK stack, I mean, you can check on Naukri and Google, and there are some companies that do ask for ELK stack specifically. But whether they shortlist you or not depends on a lot of different factors, right? So I can't exactly say how you can find a job on ELK Stack, but I would recommend to diversify yourself and not look for a job on ELK Stack only. Somebody asks, what is better? Shubham asks, sir, which is better, Python or Salesforce? Again, depends on what kind of thing you want to look for. Salesforce, as I understand, is customer relationship management. There are some development aspects to it and admin aspects. For career, it's really not my expertise to tell you. I have a bias towards Python, so I would say Python. So Gaurav Tripathi asks, "Hi, which one has better job prospects in future with respect to salary between AWS architect, admin, or DevOps engineer?" So AWS architect, that has a good this thing. Scope for future, because solutions architect are very sought after. Solutions architect know basically everything within AWS. So you'll have a lot of set of technologies that you know, right? And a lot of companies, startups might look for you, might look that you know all of this, you can set up everything for us. But the thing is that you get defined with AWS. You are the AWS guy. You know AWS best. You can migrate to other cloud technologies because they're similar, like Azure and GCP. But if somebody knows Azure better than you, then they will go for the Azure guy. So that's there. So that's kind of on you, what you choose to take. AWS architect. I would recommend AWS architect over admin, because salary wise, architects get much better pay. And DevOps engineers do get a higher, similar high pay as architects. So it would be a tie between AWS architect, solutions architect, and DevOps engineer. All right, so Abhimanyu asked again, sir, I have done a DevOps engineer, but how can I get a job as a fresher? So I've already told you, know all the tools, do some projects by yourself, and keep on looking to it. That's the secret to finding a job. You'll get one job out of 200 rejections. That's how it is. So Bala asks, data structures required for DevOps. Hmm. Well, it's not bad that if you don't know. Some of the junior DevOps roles require you to know coding, and there you might need to use data structures. So yeah, I guess you would need to know data structures for DevOps, but not like high tech data structures. Maybe you need to know linked lists and stack and binary search trees. Maybe not hash maps. So Raj is saying, I'm 50 years old and looking at changing career. Is it possible to build a programming career at my age and what to focus on? Listen, Raj, if you are in a field and I would recommend not, leaving that job right now. Like what you're doing right now, watching videos and understanding, gaining idea, just keep on doing that and start learning coding on the side. If you think that coding is something you like, that's when you should jump into it. Because if you don't like it and you're changing just for the sake of salary, you might not be happy there also. But you might be looking just for salary, then yeah, you can do it. I would recommend starting off with the tutorials for specific languages. Python is a pretty good language that you can start off with, and we have courses on that also. It's very easy to get into, and specifically if you're new to coding, C++ has a little tougher syntax. Syntax is and how you write the code. Python is very easy to understand, so I would recommend that. So Shubham again asking beginner, please guide after Python what I need to learn and what. Shubham, right now I can't go into detail about Python, but what I would recommend is checking out a Python course on GLA. So just go to Great Learning and check for our Python course over here. So that way, you'll get the basics of it, and it should be around 3 or 2 to 4 hours long, not longer than that, and it should help you get a better idea. And if you want to check it on YouTube, we have a video for that also. Just type in Great Learning and Python. We have Barney who does an excellent tutorial for that specific purpose. All right. Okay. So let me just scroll down. More questions. So we have a forensic science student. That's interesting. So hi Anjana, you're a forensic science student. What is your question? So you have not asked a question. All right. So I hope you just want to you're just looking at it for interest, curiosity sake. Which are important for certification of DevOps. So there is no specific certification for DevOps, but you can get certified within the tools that are within DevOps. Like Docker has a certification you can get. Kubernetes has it. Docker is a company, so they provide their own certification. If you're using certain monitoring tools like Splunk, you can get certifications for them. I would recommend if you want a certification, I would recommend checking out AWS certification because it's provided by the Amazon company itself, so its credibility is high. Go for Amazon AWS Solutions Architect. That is mostly cloud, but you will know DevOps also in that. So Devashini is asking any online resources to study DevOps. So we here at Great Learning have a lot of videos you can check out on DevOps. We are still coming up with more videos. So stay subscribed and stay, watch all the live sessions there are. You can check them out. All right, so guys, that's it for today because we've already passed our time, 20 minutes past our time. If I keep on answering more, then we'll go to 2 hours. Huh? So here's what, if you guys really, really like this session, go ahead and give a like and leave a comment that you want another session on this because you want a little bit more advice or more questions you want answered. So go ahead and leave a comment on this video after this session gets saved as a video, okay? So that way we'll know what to give you guys. I'm sorry if I couldn't answer any questions, but that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you really got something out of it. Whoever questions have, whose ever question I've answered, I hope that was satisfactory for you. And again, if you like the sessions, leave a like and subscribe. And my name is Ram, and I'll see you guys in the next live session.